Welcome back to Armenia. I've come to Gyumri, the country's second largest city that has long been an important center of Armenian culture and the arts. If you wanted to pick a place to come for a slice of what life is like in Armenia, in a friendly, laid-back atmosphere, and in a pretty town with an intriguing history and lively cultural scene, well, Gyumri fits the bill. The population is only about 120,000, and despite the inordinate number of museums, cultural institutions, and some really good restaurants, the ambiance here is that of an overgrown, albeit somewhat sophisticated, small town.
I've come here by train from Yerevan, about 100 miles to the southeast. It's a lovely trip across the wide-open plateau along the Turkish border, with snow-capped mountains off in the distance, including Mount Ararat. And it's unlike train rides I've come to expect. There are lots of families on board and students on a school trip, like having bought a ticket to a rolling living room.
I'm in the Gyumri district, the town's old quarter. Gyumri is what the city was called in ancient times. During the 1800s, when Armenia was ruled by Imperial Russia, it was renamed Alexandropol in honor of Tsar Nicholas I's wife. And under the Soviet Union, it became Leninaken for you-know-who.
I've settled into a charming little apartment in a family's garden, tucked away on a side street a short walk from the center of town. The apartment has everything one needs and then some, including antiques that one doesn't usually see in rooms for rent. It's quiet, pleasant, and homey, a lot like the town itself. There's something both pleasant and real about Gyumri, the kind of place that, given its attributes, one doesn't stumble upon often while traveling.
But something tragic happened here to rock Gyumri's world, quite literally, in 1988. A massive earthquake that year killed an estimated 50,000 people across northern Armenia and devastated this city, an event from which it is still recovering nearly 4 decades later.
Before the earthquake and the mass exodus it triggered, this was a city of 240,000 people. Today, it's half that. And yet, there's a vitality here that's almost palpable.
Here in Armenia, as in the rest of the Caucasus, the days usually start late. Breakfast is ordinarily served in restaurants after 10 o'clock. I was talking to a restaurant owner yesterday and asked him about that, and considering the fact that Gyumri receives so many tourists, I thought, why don't you open it at 8 at least for breakfast? And he said he tried it, and he says he tried opening at 9, not 8, and that after a couple of weeks, he said we were simply sitting waiting for customers before 10. And so the experiment failed, but that's just how it is here. Mornings start late. On the flip side, there are all sorts of restaurants open until late in the evening. The sidewalk has become a street market along this principal street. A number of the commercial buildings behind it on the street were made unusable by the 1988 earthquake. Many of them are still standing, but they've been usurped by makeshift shops along the street. Now, I've turned onto a side street just to follow this market and see how far it goes. It clearly has the feeling now of an organized street market with just about everything for sale. Fish and cheese in one stop. I'd say that's a pretty good stop. Humongous cabbages here. And what's this? Cow's feet, cow's legs. I know I was offered a sweet in a restaurant, not a sweet, but a pastry, and I asked what was the filling, and someone had said it was cow's head meat, which didn't quite satisfy my desire at the moment, but I can certainly understand why it was offered. No animal parts go wasted here. Well, it smells great in this spot for the obvious reason, with all of those coffee beans, and some of them are being ground for consumption on the spot. People are extremely friendly here. It has that kind of laid back, no strangers met kind of feel to it. When I arrived here by train, the train station is an old Soviet era train station, very wonderful interior. It was a cool day on the chilly side, and the station is not heated, so sort of a sterile, cold, quiet, echoey atmosphere at the station. I was wondering how much trouble I would have getting a taxi from there to the main part of town, and the answer was about 1 minute. On the Yandex app, driver shows up, we head off routinely, but in the 2 kilometers or so to where I was staying, I noticed that he diverted from the path that was showing on my phone, and I thought, well, maybe there's construction up ahead and he knows about it, but as it turns out, he didn't seem to have a clue of where he was going. He got to near the spot where my guest house was, but couldn't find it. And we ended up stopping at a small square in front of a bus stop, and virtually an army of local citizens, most of them women, came up, talked to the driver. One of them spoke to me, speaking English, who was sort of coordinating the help, and they insisted on calling my guest house, talking to someone there, explaining that they didn't know where the guest house was. And sure enough, the owner of the guest house came within a few minutes to greet me and led me to my stay, which is only 2 or 3 minute walk. But just to illustrate how helpful people are, how willing they are to help you if you're in need. I didn't have to stand around long, and in the end, the Yandex driver was, although not English speaking, very apologetic and helpful, and we parted ways on the best of terms. I'm here on the central square of Gyumri, a huge rectangle that's anchored on one side by the city's massive city hall that you see behind me. Not one, but two Armenian apostolic churches abut this square, a cathedral on one side and another 19th century church on the other. The churches predate this plaza, which opened in the 1930s during the Soviet era, when it was called May Uprising Square. So no surprise, after Armenian independence in 1991, the name of this plaza was quickly changed. It's now called Vertenants Square. The statues you see in the middle, erected in 2008, refer to a distinctly Armenian story. That's Armenian hero Vartan Mamikonian on horseback, defending Christianity against Persian oppressors during a famous 5th century battle. The Armenians lost the battle, but they won the war, and that the Persians finally gave up trying to oppress Christianity in Armenia. This square has been integral to Gyumri's identity since it was established early in the Soviet era, and it still is. Only now, as you can tell, its story has changed.
Another statue on the edge of the square celebrates a different kind of hero. That's the late Las Vegas billionaire and philanthropist Kirk Kerkorian, an Armenian American remembered fondly here for donating more than $1 billion to Armenia during his lifetime. On a hilltop just outside Gyumri, the statue of Mother Armenia, erected in 1975, echoes its more famous counterpart in Yerevan. Only there's something a bit more poignant about this one. The location is as isolated as it is bucolic. Nothing much stands between the statue and the barricaded border with Turkey a few kilometers away.
Something a bit lonely and sad about this statue, to tell you the truth. There used to be a water feature that came down from the top through tubing and provided a fountain effect all the way down to the bottom of the stairs. That's dried up. Where I'm walking beside the monument was once a park-like lane that was manicured and had a designated walkway. It's not received any care in a long time, you can tell. But the reason I've come in this direction on this hilltop is for something else I want to show you.
The giant cylindrical stone structure you see is the Black Fortress, or Sev Bird as it's known here. It's one of the most unusual historic monuments you'll find anywhere.
It's an abandoned Russian imperial fort that was built here during the 1830s, after the first of several wars between Russia and the Ottoman Empire during the 19th century. Gyumri, or Alexandropol as it was known then, is next to the Turkish border. Although there was never a siege of this fort during any of the Russo-Turkish conflicts, it was still an important Russian outpost along the frontier. This fort is a bit off the radar. It's on tourist maps, but there's not a lot done to promote it. In fact, how do you get inside? You wouldn't know necessarily if you showed up at the bottom of the hill. But I'm walking that hill to try to get inside this fort. And if we're able to look inside, I think you're going to be surprised at what's there.
Well, I've come around to the front, and as you can see, the door's open. Nothing left to do but walk inside, I guess.
Bizarro world could you dream up a script whereby an imperial Russian fortress has been converted to an entertainment venue. But that's exactly what is in the process of happening here, with a wealthy Armenian entrepreneur buying it and planning to make it a concert hall. I didn't expect to be allowed inside this place, let alone take center stage, if you will, but there's no one around to prevent it. The doors are open, and it's available to all comers to take a look inside this old fortress. You've got to wonder what Russian soldiers from 200 years ago would be thinking now if they only knew what this place has become. This structure's days as a fort are long over, but the Russian presence here isn't. Just over the hill from the fort are 3,000 soldiers of the Russian 102nd military base. Part of an unusual arrangement between Armenia and Russia following the breakup of the former Soviet Union. Ordinarily, you'd expect a small country that had finally gained independence from a dominant power to want no part of that power's having soldiers on its soil. But Armenia has particular circumstances. That's to say, it has troubles with its two closest neighbors, Azerbaijan and Turkey, who have long been hostile to it. So for its protection, Armenia has continued to rely on Russian assistance, as it did during the First Nagorno-Karabakh War in the 1990s, even as its relations with Russia have frayed. That's why, by mutual agreement, you still have Russian soldiers patrolling Armenia's border with Turkey, and the large contingent of Russians stationed, ironically, in the shadows of this now defunct fortress. I'm back at the marvelous old train station where I entered Gyumri. I'm headed back to Yerevan to catch my plane out of the country. Only as opposed to the regular train I came here on, I'm taking a faster train that makes the 100-mile journey in a little more than 2 hours. Well, this does it for me in Armenia and the Caucasus. Thanks for liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. I'm going home to the U.S. for a bit.
I'll see you soon with a special update about my travel plans. Until then, ciao and peace.